And there's a major blood vessel that goes through your abdomen that comes from your heart, called the aorta. That is the main blood vessel that carries blood from your heart around the body. And it goes through the thorax, the chest, and it goes down the abdomen, so it's called the abdominal aorta. And so that saw would have clean cut through that. All his blood would have gushed out. He wouldn't have lived for very long.
We are now on to week 4 of Monday Macabre, a weekly series dissecting a horror game up until Halloween, and as we seem to stay in theme with interactive movie tie-in games, who can't forget the Larry Fessenden video game that is Until Dawn, a single-player Sony exclusive, but one that I think more often than not lives up to the genre, and without any pun intended, a game changer. At its best, Until Dawn is a clever mix of unsettling horror and innovative new gameplay ideas, all wrapped up in some particularly good-looking graphics, for the most part. At its worst, the dialogue leans in heavily towards the clunky, some of the gameplay elements become repetitive, and despite the promise of hundreds of possible endings I've come to discover on replaying this game for the show, that replay value may need to limit itself to every few years. Having that gap of playtime actually helped the experience, mostly because what I remembered particularly liking when this game came out was its use of the butterfly effect system, in which players must make choices that will change the story.
And now, let us investigate your feelings toward other people in greater depth. What you value, what you respect in yourself and others. Which would you say was most important in a person, loyalty or honesty?
Of course, most narrative-driven interactive games have tackled this countless times. I think the quickest comparison is anything from the Quantum Dream roster or Telltale games, but even those games didn't go as far enough with the choose-your-path style, at least not up until Detroit. I'd say once Until Dawn made the rounds, it nails it with polish. The title was developed by Supermassive Games, who went on to do a bunch of VR spin-offs, spiritual sequels, and lately, a series of games called the Dark Pictures Anthology. I think it's safe to say that this team has their teeth and nails deep into the interactive drama horror genre than any others. And I know it's popular to say that these are barely even games because of their cinematic approach rather than focus on active hand-eye coordination, and yes, Until Dawn still suffers from requiring the player to hit certain plot points regardless if they want to or not. But at the end of the day, if I'm clicking buttons, if I'm shaking the controller like a weirdo, if I have to really focus so I don't miss a beat, guess what? It's still a game. That said, around the time that this comes out, I have to wonder if the team was aware of just how big a challenge they were taking on. After all, the plot premise is a classic horror fodder. A group of teens in an isolated location being stalked by something in the woods. Oh, I haven't heard of one of those for a hot minute. Added to that, the focus on exploration, mild puzzle solving, and keeping any run and gun sections to the barest minimum isn't wildly different to some other survival horror games either. And with the choice angle it runs on, the flowchart for each direction must look insane. The game kicks off with a pre-credit sequence that serves as both a mini gameplay tutorial and an introduction to the game's tone. In classic fashion, the teenage characters are played almost exclusively by actors in their mid-20s to 30s, some of whom you'll recognize like Hayden Panettiere, Rami Malek, Peter Stormare, and even Larry Fessenden has a brief appearance as the Flamethrower Man.
I'm here to tell you what you're up against being back on this mountain. You should never have returned. I don't know why you did after what happened last year.
You mean with Hannah and Beth?
Yeah, how could you know without being involved?
Or responsible?
You hold on to your horses. I don't take kindly to you kids coming up here to my mountain.
Your mountain. Huh. I'm sure the Washingtons would be very surprised to hear that.
Well, the mountain don't belong to me, it's true. But it don't belong to the Washingtons. This mountain belongs to the Wendigo.
They have a party at this lodge in an isolated location known as Blackwood Mountain. The deaths of twin sisters Hannah and Beth are a result of a prank gone wrong, and after a year since the tragedy, their brother Josh invites the same group of friends for another get-together. Choice starts out small when it comes to dialogue, but even before the horror starts, Until Dawn has you making relationship decisions that gently affect the way you play the full game, and the results are pleasing enough. Your allegiances early on might not entirely change who lives or dies, but it does mean you become surprisingly attached to most of the group faster than you might think. Add in the effective mocap in places and gradual disintegration of the cast's attractive looks as you progress, and you might begin to feel more fondness for them with their ultra-detailed skin still on their faces. An unlikable guy like Mike suddenly becomes the noble hero armed with a pistol is a good touch, whereas a character like Emily being a stuck-up bitch lends to some of the humor of the game.
Please, just try to understand.
Understand the palm of my hand, bitch.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
But can I just say, this has been a long-term pet peeve of mine. Can we please animate the lips and teeth better? To this day, it always looks bad with any of these mocap releases. I can't be the only one who finds this to be so butt-fucking ugly. Anyways, this game cements that it was about time we made the stupid decisions in horror. Will you hide under the bed when the killer comes knocking, or decide to run while you have a chance? From the start, it instantly feels like you have control of your new wards, even if you are just hammering a quick time event when the time is right. Like Heavy Rain or Beyond Two Souls before it, Until Dawn takes control during the big set pieces and requires some choice button pressing to survive. There's no annoying contortion of your thumbs here though, as you simply tap individual prompts or swipe across the touchpad to light matches or turn pages. My favorite component is keeping the controller as still as possible to avoid further danger. The motion sensor isn't the most sensitive, even on the highest difficulty setting, but it's a welcomed addition to keeping the player on their toes, especially since it can pop up out of nowhere. You also walk a lot in this game. It can be a chore in some regard, but in other ways I really like the fixed angles they hang on to, like classic Resident Evil or Silent Hill style, and not knowing what may show up in the frame is always scary. And to keep any bit of exploration refreshing, the game implements these collectible totems which tend to reveal a visual clue to a character's potential fate or decision in a chapter. Some are obvious to find, others are a little more hidden, but just be on the lookout for that flashing light. It's revealed that each chapter of the game is broken up by these psychological sections where Peter Stormare asks the player 50-50 type life or death questions that can alter a character's narrative throughout the game. You'll even notice a white butterfly pop up in the corner of the screen indicating you made a very important decision. I'll even commend the supernatural material. When this turns into a Wendigo story, I am instantly hooked. The designs are unique and are all mangled and whatnot, and it raises the stakes by a long shot. It just takes a long while to get there with false scare after false scare.
Get the fuck?
I think all in all, the teen slasher genre has always had a formula. A very simple formula of gory violence, schlocky dialogue, girls in lip gloss, boys in Leatherman jackets, and plenty of grisly deaths. Until Dawn has no interest in explaining the formula or subverting it or tearing it down altogether, and quite fairly it doesn't have to. It knows these formulaic tropes exist, and it's quite happy to introduce you to 8 teenagers, plop them into a land of no cell phone reception up a snowy mountain, and let you make the decisions from there. And for the most part, that's all it needs to be. Plus, how could you not enjoy some of these wonderful death scenes?
No!